It's a strange thing how a seemingly ordinary morning can turn into something truly horrifying. I remember reading about Lisa Hartwell, a woman in Colorado who unknowingly ran into a situation that would make headlines about the dangers of mountain living. It was back in 2016, October 7th to be exact, in Wildwood Heights, an affluent neighborhood in Boulder. The area was still dark when she began her usual 5 a.m. run. Lisa was a 33-year-old marketing coordinator who loved the mountain lifestyle. She'd moved there a couple of years prior, drawn to the promise of mountain living with urban conveniences. She was a dedicated fitness enthusiast, and her morning run was sacred to her. A time when she could clear her mind while enjoying the crisp mountain air. That autumn was unusually dry, and wildlife officials had issued warnings about increased animal activity in residential areas. Deer, elk, and their predators were venturing closer to human settlements in search of water. There had even been several mountain lion sightings reported. But Lisa, confident in her familiarity with the neighborhood, dismissed these warnings. Mountain lions, or cougars as some call them, are North America's second-largest wild cat species. They're powerful predators perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain. They possess incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability, making them formidable ambush hunters. Unbeknownst to Lisa, a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through a drainage culvert beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. The deer bolted, leaving the frustrated predator crouched in the shadows. As Lisa passed within 10 feet of the culvert, the mountain lion exploded from the shadows. It covered the distance in a single, powerful leap. His massive front paws struck Lisa between the shoulder blades, sending her crashing to the ground. Her attempts to scream were cut short as the mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of her neck. The mountain lion used his strength to pull Lisa's body into the culvert, seeking the darkness and confined space for protection while he fed. Her body was recovered 3 hours later by police officers and wildlife personnel. The mountain lion had retreated further into the drainage network. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine. The mountain lion's killing bite had proven instantly fatal. The investigation revealed that Lisa had inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt, triggering the attack. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day in the foothills above the neighborhood. Then there was Felicity Grant. It was August 19, 2017, when she arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado, a vast wilderness area known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife population. The mountainous region stretched across thousands of acres of dense forest and winding trails. But these wilderness areas also served as prime habitat for mountain lions and other dangerous predators. Felicity Grant, a 39-year-old fitness influencer from Denver with over 5,000 social media followers, had planned what she called her ultimate wilderness transformation experience. She was known for her entitled attitude and belief that her athletic superiority made her exempt from rules. There are moments I can't shake, stories that cling to the quiet hours of the night. The tale of Felicity, the influencer, is one of those. She was found 3 days after she went missing, The search and rescue team, concluding it, was a mountain lion attack. Felicity had a habit of clashing with people. One woman, a fellow hiker named Maria, tried to warn her about hiking alone at dawn. Felicity dismissed her, saying jealous locals were trying to sabotage successful influencers. She'd chosen the Rabbit Ears Pass Trail, ignoring close signs, claiming they didn't apply to elite athletes like herself. She even tore down warning notices, arguing that taxpayers like her had every right to use public trails. But mountain lions are apex predators, perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain. Adult males can weigh up to 180 pounds and stretch over 8 feet long. They can leap 40 feet in a single bound. Their retractable claws, up to 4 inches long, grip prey, and their canine teeth deliver fatal neck bites that sever the spinal cord. These hunters prefer to ambush from behind and above, using stealth and patience. They're drawn to erratic movements, heavy breathing, or signs of distress. Felicity began her solo run at 5:30 a.m., aiming to avoid inferior hikers. She wore noise-canceling headphones, blasting electronic music, and carried raw steaks for her post-workout meal. The combination of her erratic running, heavy breathing, and the scent of fresh meat created perfect conditions to attract a mountain lion. A 140-pound male had been hunting in the area, its territory including the Rabbit Ears Pass Trail. The scent of fresh meat carried over a mile, drawing the cougar to Felicity's movement. It stalked her along the ridge, using rocks and trees for cover. As Felicity rounded a bend, the mountain lion positioned itself on a boulder about 15 feet above the path. Unaware due to the music and her belief in her invulnerability, Felicity passed below. The mountain lion launched itself in a devastating aerial attack. The 140-pound predator struck from behind with tremendous force. Its hind claws raked down her back, while its front paws wrapped around her shoulders and neck. The mountain lion's canine teeth clamped down on the back of Felicity's neck with surgical precision, targeting the cervical vertebrae. It applied crushing press of over 400 pounds per square inch directly to Felicity's spinal cord, severing the connection between her brain and body instantly. The bite penetrated deep into the neck muscles and fractured the vertebrae, causing immediate paralysis from the neck down. The cougar maintained its grip, claws securing its position. Its hind legs continued raking down her spine and legs, opening deep wounds that bled profusely. Within 2 minutes, Felicity died from spinal cord severance, massive blood loss, and suffocation. The mountain lion then dragged her body off the trail to feed undisturbed. Another story, equally haunting, took place on December 3, 2014. Fluorescent lights illuminated the kennels at the county animal shelter. Jennifer Walsh, a 25-year-old veterinary student, moved between the cages, believing every animal deserved a second chance. She volunteered on weekends, advocating for the shelter's most difficult cases, gravitating toward aggressive dogs marked for euthanization. The dog that would cost Jennifer her life was Diesel, a 75-pound pit bull with a scarred muzzle and eyes that seemed to hold years of rage. He'd been surrendered after multiple bite incidents, including an attack on a neighbor's child requiring emergency surgery. The behavioral assessment deemed him too dangerous for adoption. Scheduled for euthanization, Jennifer had watched Diesel for 3 days, searching for a gentle soul beneath his aggression. She saw him pace, heard him growl, watched him destroy toys, but she also noticed what she interpreted as vulnerability. Moments when he pressed against the back wall, softening when he thought no one was watching. Shelter protocol was clear. Dogs like Diesel were never to be handled alone. Experienced staff with proper equipment were required for any interaction. But Jennifer believed Diesel's aggression was fear-based, that he needed one-on-one attention. On that December afternoon, with staff busy, Jennifer made the decision that would cost her her life. She approached Diesel. I keep thinking about Jennifer, a young woman who dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. But that dream ended in a flash of violence, a stark reminder that good intentions aren't always enough. Her story is a cautionary tale, one that echoes in veterinary schools even now. The attack happened quickly. Jennifer was at a shelter, evaluating a dog named Diesel, a 75-pound mix who was slated for euthanization. She went to his kennel with a lead and a key to the isolation room. His reaction was immediate. Teeth bared, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from his chest. But Jennifer, perhaps seeing what she wanted to see, interpreted these signs as fear, not aggression. When the kennel door opened, Diesel seemed to shift, calculating. He paused, just for a moment, assessing Jennifer's position. It gave her a false sense of confidence, enough to slip the lead around his neck and guide him into the small isolation room. Once inside, she closed the door and removed the lead, thinking freedom would help him relax. The room was small, only 8 by 10 feet, with concrete walls and a single metal folding chair, designed for safety but also offering no escape. For minutes that must have felt like hours. Diesel stood rigid, his eyes fixed on Jennifer. She sat, talking to him in a gentle voice, unaware that she was the one being evaluated. The attack came when she stood and took a step toward him, hand extended in what she thought was a peaceful gesture. But to Diesel, it was a threat. He launched himself across the room, his jaws targeting her throat with terrible precision. Her scream was cut short as his teeth sank into her neck, severing major blood vessels. His jaws locked, his powerful neck muscles shaking her violently. Blood sprayed across the concrete walls as she went into shock. Other volunteers, hearing the scream, rushed to the door, but it was locked from the inside. By the time they got in, Jennifer was motionless on the floor, her life draining away. Diesel stood over her, muzzle stained red, his eyes still burning with aggression. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Diesel was immediately sedated and euthanized. The investigation that followed revealed that Jennifer had violated multiple safety protocols, ignoring clear warning signs. The shelter implemented new security measures. Her family established a scholarship in her name, but with a request that it go to students studying wildlife conservation, a final acknowledgement that some animals remain fundamentally dangerous, no matter how much love they are shown. Not long after this tragedy, on April 17, 2018, another incident unfolded in Florida, this time at the Sunshine Primate Sanctuary. It was a humid day, the air heavy over the grounds of the facility, which claimed to rescue primates but was actually exploiting them for tourist photographs. The 20-acre property housed over 30 primates in substandard conditions, generating revenue through photo sessions that legitimate sanctuaries would never allow. Gorillas, chimpanzees, and other primates paced restlessly behind inadequate barriers under the afternoon sun. Jessica Rodriguez, a 31-year-old veterinary technician from Tampa, visited the sanctuary with her husband, Carlos. She believed it was a legitimate conservation effort. Jessica had always been passionate about animal welfare, documenting animal care and recovery through photos. She had dedicated herself to animal welfare, earning her degree while working nights. Her passion for primate conservation led her to volunteer at legitimate sanctuaries and support organizations working to protect great apes in the wild. She genuinely believed her visit to Sunshine Primate Sanctuary would help promote conservation through the photos she planned to take. That afternoon, Jessica participated in what the facility called an educational encounter with King, a 350-pound silverback gorilla acquired from a defunct research facility. The sanctuary's safety measures were minimal. A chain-link barrier separated visitors from the gorilla's enclave, with no additional protections or supervision from qualified staff. Silverback gorillas are among the most powerful primates on Earth. Adult males can weigh up to 400 pounds and possess the strength of 10 grown men. They are intelligent and emotionally complex, but also territorial and aggressive when they perceive threats. A gorilla's behavior can shift from calm to violent in seconds. Their hands can grip with crushing force, and their jaws hold sharp teeth capable of inflicting severe wounds. It's a display of power I've always found both awe-inspiring and deeply unsettling. I remember reading about Jessica, who approached a gorilla enclosure with her camera, wanting to capture the animal's intelligence. She saw King sitting calmly near the fence, seemingly observing the human visitors with curiosity. Jessica started taking photos, hoping to share a conservation message through intimate portraits. But then came the fatal moment. Jessica decided to reach through the fence to touch King, believing it would create a more powerful image. She saw his calm demeanor and mistook it for friendliness, not realizing it was the calculated patience of a territorial animal assessing potential threats. King's reaction was immediate and devastating. The instant her hand crossed the barrier, the 350-pound silverback grabbed her arm with incredible strength, pulling her against the chain-link fence. Her scream filled the air as his grip tightened, crushing bone. Others tried to help, but the gorilla's strength was too much. One hand maintained its hold on her arm, while the other reached through to grab her head and shoulders, pulling her harder against the inadequate fencing. His territorial instincts took over, his powerful hands inflicting trauma to her head, neck, and arms. Her attempts to break free only seemed to escalate his aggression, as he saw her struggles as a continued threat. Her movements grew weaker as blood loss and injuries overwhelmed her. King's grip never loosened, his focus entirely on eliminating what he perceived as an intrusion. Within minutes, the struggle ended. The attack was fatal. The gorilla held on to her lifeless form, displaying threatening behavior toward anyone who approached. Emergency responders arrived, but it was too late. Jessica was already gone. The investigation revealed the facility was operating illegally, exploiting animals and visitors while providing inadequate safety and care. It was shut down, and the primates were moved to legitimate sanctuaries. King was transferred to an accredited facility where he could live out his days in conditions appropriate for his species. Jessica's death led to stricter regulations for animal sanctuaries and enforcement of wildlife protection laws. Her family established a foundation to support legitimate primate conservation efforts, ensuring her passion for animal welfare would continue. Then there was the evening of March 18, 2017, in an upscale neighborhood in Asheville, North Carolina. Maria Santos, a 41-year-old single mother and dog walker, was making her rounds. She'd been walking dogs professionally for 3 years, building a loyal clientele among the affluent homeowners. Her income supplemented her day job at a veterinary clinic, helping her support her teenage daughter. The neighborhood was carved out of pristine mountain forest, and recent construction had disrupted animal movement patterns, forcing bears and other wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. Maria was aware of warnings about increased bear activity, but had never encountered any dangerous animals. She carried pepper spray and had received training on wildlife encounters. That evening, while walking 3 large dogs, she noticed unusual activity near some garbage cans. Black bears are common in North America, and mother bears with cubs are extremely protective. I've seen what bears can do when they feel threatened, and it's a primal force to behold. Their claws and teeth can inflict devastating injuries, and they can run up to 35 miles per hour when surprised or cornered. They're drawn to residential areas by the scent of garbage, pet food, anything that attracts them. I remember reading about Maria, who approached an intersection one morning and found a 300-pound female black bear with 2 cubs rummaging through garbage cans. The mother bear was feeding, cubs playing nearby. Maria began backing away slowly, but her 3 dogs became agitated and started barking. The mother bear's protective instincts immediately kicked in. She rose to her full height, vocalizing aggressively, positioning herself between the dogs and her offspring. Maria tried to retreat, but the barking and lunging only escalated the situation. The bear charged, covering the 30 yards between them in seconds. Maria, entangled in the leashes, fell hard onto the asphalt. The dogs scattered, leaving Maria vulnerable. The bear struck Maria's back and shoulders, driving her face first into the pavement. Her jaws clamped down on Maria's head and neck. Attempts to protect herself were futile. The bear's claws raked across Maria's torso and limbs, opening deep gashes. Residents heard the commotion and called 911, attempting to scare the bear away. The mother bear eventually retreated with her cubs, leaving Maria motionless. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. Maria had died from massive head and neck trauma. The investigation revealed that improperly secured garbage containers had attracted the bear family, creating the conditions for the fatal encounter. Wildlife officials relocated the bear and cubs to a remote mountain area. The community implemented new waste management protocols, including bear-proof garbage containers and an early warning system for wildlife sightings. Then there was Rebecca Martinez on October 15, 2016. the Georgia sun setting over her 10-acre property. The constant barking of 40 rescue dogs echoed across the land. At 34, she had spent 8 years building her unofficial sanctuary, taking in the dogs that other shelters wouldn't touch, the aggressive ones, the biters, the animals marked for immediate euthanization. Her recent divorce had left her financially strained and emotionally isolated, with only her dogs for company on the remote property. Rebecca's neighbors had grown used to the noise, though some whispered concerns about the woman who seemed to care more about dangerous animals than her own safety. She rarely left the property anymore, moving between encloses with hands scarred from countless bites. Friends noticed the changes in Rebecca. She'd grown thinner, more withdrawn, speaking more about her dogs than anything else. Her ex-husband had tried to warn her about the dangers, but Rebecca dismissed his concerns. Even the feed delivery drivers had begun leaving supplies at the gate. The main enclosure housed her 3 largest rescues: Rex, a 90-pound pit bull mix; Titan, an 85-pound Rottweiler cross; and Scar, a 75-pound mixed breed. Unbeknownst to Rebecca, these 3 had been forming an alliance, establishing a hierarchy that put them at odds with anyone who came between them and food. The warning signs had been there for anyone trained to recognize them. The 3 dogs had begun sleeping closer together, sharing food bowls and displaying coordinated territorial behavior. They'd started following Rebecca's movements more intently during feeding times, their body language shifting from grateful anticipation to something more predatory. But Rebecca, exhausted from managing 40 animals alone and emotionally invested in seeing progress, I've always been drawn to stories where the line between savior and victim blurs. Consider Rebecca, who dedicated her life to rescuing dogs, animals others had given up on. But one evening, that dedication turned tragic. She wasn't seen as a rescuer, but as competition for resources. Rebecca's daily feeding routine was always the most dangerous part of her day. She'd fill 5 buckets with kibble, the clanging sending the dogs into a frenzy. The ground was still wet from an afternoon thunderstorm on this particular evening as she approached the main enclosure, buckets in hand. The 3 large dogs pressed against the fence, eyes locked on the food, muscles tense. She'd done this thousands of times before, but this night felt different. I can only imagine the feeling, a sense of unease settling in. As she unlatched the gate and stepped into the enclosure, her worn boots slipped on the muddy ground. She stumbled, the weight of the buckets pulling her down. The metal containers crashed, spilling kibble across the wet dirt. Rex was the first to move, but as Rebecca struggled to get back on her feet, something in his demeanor shifted. His eyes, once focused on the kibble, now locked onto her. The attack came without warning. Rex, all 90 pounds of him, slammed into Rebecca's chest, driving her back to the ground. His jaws clamped down on her shoulder, tearing through flesh. Rebecca's scream pierced the evening air, but there was no one around for miles. Titan and Scar joined the assault within seconds, their pack instincts overriding years of rehabilitation. Titan's massive jaws found her left arm, shaking violently. Scar circled behind, his teeth sinking into her legs, dragging her further from the gate. Rebecca fought desperately, her free hand clawing at Rex's face, trying to break his grip. But the dogs were in full predatory mode now, their attacks coordinated and relentless. Blood soaked into the muddy ground as they continued their assault, their growls mixing with Rebecca's weakening cries. The feeding frenzy lasted nearly 10 minutes before the dogs finally backed away. Rebecca lay motionless in the mud, her body broken and torn, surrounded by the scattered kibble that had triggered the attack. For 3 days, Rebecca's body remained undiscovered on the isolated property. It wasn't until a delivery driver arrived with dog food that the scene was uncovered. Animal control officers found the 3 attacking dogs still in the enclosure, showing no signs of continued aggression. Rex, Titan, and Scar were euthanized within hours, along with 12 other dogs deemed too dangerous for relocation. Rebecca's death sparked debates about unlicensed rescue operations. New regulations were implemented, requiring permits for anyone housing more than 10 rescue animals. But for those who knew Rebecca, the rules came too late. Then there's the story of Camille Morel. It was April 3, 2017, in Thor, France. Inside the Thor Zoo Safari Park, the wolf sector seemed calm, yet something alive and waiting stirred. Camille, a fitness instructor known for her precision, decided to spend a weekend at the Thor Zoo Safari. She'd stayed once before and remembered the tranquility of waking to animal sounds. She booked the chalet not just for rest, but to keep her running habit intact. The park's trails and guest roads were well marked and safe during visiting hours. She'd read the safety pamphlet about restricted areas and believed her familiarity with the grounds made her cautious enough. Her chalet overlooked the fenced wolf sector, and guests were told the viewing area was completely secure. Camille trusted the system. Her goal that morning was simple: a quick 2-mile jog before breakfast, the same as she did every morning at home. I've often thought about how quickly a sense of safety can shatter. One moment, you're jogging. The next, you're facing a pack of wolves. It happened to Camille. She'd unknowingly crossed into a wolf enclosure. The wolves had been fed the previous evening, but the cold night kept them alert. 3 of them, the dominant male and 2 others, were near the northern edge, restless, catching her scent. A zookeeper in the observation tower spotted her and radioed, trying to confirm the route was clear, but then realized the awful truth. She was inside. He shouted into the radio, but it was too late. The wolves emerged from the trees, low to the ground, tails stiff, heads aligned. Camille slowed, confused, thinking the barrier must be nearby, but their posture shifted as they advanced in a slow, deliberate arc. She froze. Seeing the empty stretch of gravel behind her, she started jogging back, faster this time. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated, their paws hitting the dirt. She broke into a sprint. The zookeeper watched as Camille glanced back at the wolves. Near a drainage trench, her foot caught on the uneven gravel and she fell hard. Before she could get up, the lead wolf clamped down on her right thigh, pulling backward. She twisted, trying to kick free, but another wolf lunged at her shoulder. Her scream echoed across the enclosure. The zookeeper sounded the alarm and radioed the rangers. The response vehicle was rerouted, delaying arrival to just under 10 minutes. Within what they considered normal range for an emergency, 2 more wolves joined, surrounding her as she tried to crawl toward the ditch. The lead wolf released and re-gripped higher, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out with her hands, scraping the gravel, trying to push herself forward, but one of the animals bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments, she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. Rangers arrived within 10 minutes in a vehicle. They found the wolves clustered over Camille's body, heads low. Warning shots sent the pack scattering into the trees. 2 rangers approached as another called for a tranquilizer team. Camille lay on her side, clothing torn, deep bites from shoulder to thigh. One ranger checked for a pulse and found none. They covered her with a thermal blanket and secured the area until all 5 wolves were sedated. An autopsy confirmed death by exsanguination, massive blood loss due to multiple deep lacerations, and crushing trauma to the limbs. The body was transported under escort to Versailles. That afternoon, Camille's family filed a civil lawsuit against the Thori Zoo Safari and its parent company, alleging gross negligence and breach of safety protocol. After a year of investigation and hearings, the court ruled in favor of the family. The park quietly settled without appeal. Following the incident, a criminal negligence inquiry and an independent enclos audit were conducted. Thori Zoo Safari implemented procedural retrofits, installing interlocks and alarms that trigger if any gate remains unlatched for more than 15 seconds. It was July 22, 2016. The Oklahoma sun beat down on the dusty grounds of Wild Art Big Hat Sanctuary, a privately owned facility nestled among rolling hills 30 miles outside Tulsa. The 50-acre property housed over 20 rescued lions, tigers, and other exotic cats in a collection of chain-link enclos that stretched across the rural landscape. The afternoon air shimmered with heat while the distant sounds of roaring and pacing echoed from various habitats as the cats sought shade from the oppressive summer temperatures. Ashley Martinez, a 23-year-old college student from Dallas, had discovered the sanctuary through social media while road tripping with her boyfriend Jake through Oklahoma's quirky roadside attractions. Ashley was constantly seeking unique photo opportunities for her personal memories, having grown up taking pictures at every family vacation and special event. Her phone was filled with daredevil shots from cliff edges, abandoned buildings, and extreme sports activities that showcased her fearless personality to friends and family. Ashley had grown up in suburban Dallas as the youngest of 3 sisters, developing a competitive streak that drove her to constantly push boundaries and seek attention through increasingly dramatic stunts. Her psychology major at Texas Tech University had given her confidence in reading people and situations, but her academic knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. That afternoon, Ashley and Jacob paid the sanctuary's fee for a close encounter experience that promised visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations and educational presentations. The facility operated in a legal gray area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos and accredited sanctuaries would never permit. African lions are apex predators that retain all their wild instincts regardless of human contact or hand-rearing. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed, and territorial behaviors that make them extremely dangerous in captivity. Lions are social animals with complex hierarchies, but they view humans as either threats to be eliminated or prey to be consumed. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 650 pounds per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can inflict fatal wounds with a single swipe. I've seen photos that I can't quite shake from my mind. A woman smiling, holding up her phone, and just behind her, a massive lion. That photo never happened, of course, but the impulse did. The desire for a selfie, a brush with the wild, it ended in tragedy. Ashley, during a sanctuary tour, saw her chance for the ultimate photo. She asked her friend to distract the owner while she climbed over the barrier for a close-up selfie with Caesar, a 400-pound African lion. Jake engaged the owner, and Ashley quietly approached Caesar's enclos, climbing over the 4-foot chain-link fence. The lion was resting about 10 feet away, his golden eyes tracking her, but showing no immediate aggression. As she crouched down, phone extended, Caesar's demeanor subtly shifted. His ears flattened, his tail twitched. The attack was sudden and explosive. Predatory instincts, millions of years in the making, recognized her as prey. The lion launched himself, covering the distance in a single bound. Ashley's phone flew away as Caesar's paws struck her chest. She fell backward, his claws digging into her torso and shoulders. His jaws clamped down on her neck, teeth puncturing muscle and vertebrae. Caesar's territorial instincts drove him to continue the assault, claws raking, bite crushing. Ashley's movements weakened as blood loss and spinal trauma overwhelmed her. Jake's screams brought the owner running, but Caesar's posture over his kill made intervention dangerous. Ashley was gone within minutes. Emergency responders arrived, but it was too late. The investigation revealed the facility lacked proper permits and insurance. Caesar was relocated. Ashley's death devastated her family and prompted her university to enhance safety education. The incident led to stricter regulations for exotic animal facilities and enforcement of safety laws. It makes you wonder how many times we flirt with danger, unaware of the ancient programming that can be triggered in an instant. Another incident. This one in Grand Paradiso National Park, northern Italy, on May 21, 2018. A small expedition of 4 had finished dinner, leaving a storage bag unsealed near the cooking area. Giovanni Russo, a certified alpine guide, had worked these slopes for over a decade. He and his wife Elena led trekking tours. Giovanni was seen as practical, experienced, someone who knew when to turn back. The Grand Paradiso region had become a focal point for conservation, wolves returning after decades of absence. Giovanni respected them, but didn't fear them. He saw himself as part of the balance. The couple's company specialized in remote routes with minimal disturbance. Giovanni often told clients that predators avoided people. The trek that weekend was routine, a mild ascent to a campsite near the meadow of Almni. His clients, a pair of hikers from Milan, trusted them completely. That night, they left a pack of trail mix open near the fire pit, scraps from dinner tossed nearby. Wolves in this region average 60 to 70 pounds, lean and gray. Normally nocturnal, they hunted deer in coordinated packs. but recently rangers had observed younger wolves venturing closer to human camps, especially when food was accessible. Just before dawn, around 4 a.m., Elena woke to soft rustling near the cooking area, then a faint growl. She thought it was a fox until she saw silhouettes clustered around the fire pit where the unsealed food bag lay torn open. She whispered for Giovanni, who grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside alone, walking toward the food. The beam caught 3 wolves standing over wrappers and crumbs. He shouted and waved his light, but they didn't scatter. One stepped forward, hackles raised, paws firm. Giovanni shouted again, clapping as he closed the distance. The older female lunged, nipping at his forearm in a defensive snap. Giovanni jerked back, but a younger one followed through, clamping down near his elbow. The bite struck deep, severing tissue. He fell backward, blood pulsing. The wolves held their ground, circling the dropped food bag. Elena tore from the tent with a burning stick. The scream. Elena's scream as she swung the torch. I can almost hear it echoing through the trees. Giovanni lay collapsed, and the image of that blood pooling. It stays with me. The investigation that followed painted a grim picture. A freak accident, they called it. The way he twisted, the artery. A tear that caused near-instant collapse. Food, they said, had provoked the wolves. Unsecured rations. But let me take you somewhere else, thousands of miles away, to the Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, India. July 15, 2016. Imagine a vast mangrove delta, a maze of tidal channels where the Ganges meets the Bay of Bengal. Ancient mangrove trees rising from the brackish water. A UNESCO World Heritage Site, yes, but also one of the world's most dangerous ecosystems. Crocodiles lurking, venomous snakes coiled, and something far more terrifying. The Lawson family arrived that day. Genevieve, David, and their teenage children, Emma and Jake. Genevieve, it seems, was a force of nature herself. She'd booked the most expensive tour, and from the start, she was berating the local guide, Ravi. Her husband tried to calm her, but she dismissed every safety warning as fear-mongering. All she wanted was the perfect photograph. Ravi, despite his years of experience, was intimidated. The boat had safety barriers, but Genevieve saw them as obstacles. She wanted authentic jungle photographs, and she wouldn't let anything stop her. You see, the Sundarbans are home to the world's largest population of Bengal tigers, apex predators uniquely adapted to this aquatic environment. Unlike their mainland cousins, these tigers are exceptional swimmers, and they've developed a terrifying willingness to hunt humans in the water. Imagine a creature weighing up to 400 pounds, over 10 feet long, with 4-inch canine teeth capable of crushing a windpipe in seconds. During the afternoon tour, Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks. He cut the engine, whispered for silence. But Genevieve, frustrated by the distance, declared she needed closer photographs. Ignoring all protests, she stepped over the safety barrier and into the chest-deep water, camera held high. Unbeknownst to them, a massive 400-pound male Bengal tiger was resting nearby. These tigers are ambush predators, using the water to their advantage. This particular tiger had killed humans before, and it recognized the sound of vulnerable prey entering its territory. It slipped into the water and began swimming toward Genevieve, only its eyes and nose visible above the surface. She was completely unaware as she photographed tiger tracks along the shoreline. The tiger closed the final 20 feet underwater, its powerful limbs propelling it with deadly precision. There are moments in the wild where the line between hunter and hunted blurs with terrifying speed. I've read accounts where a scent, faint and unfamiliar, can trigger an ancient reflex, urging a creature to follow, test, and close the distance. It's a stark reminder of the primal instincts that still simmer beneath the surface of the natural world. I remember one case in particular that always stuck with me. On November 15, 2016, in the remote forests of Primorsky Krai, eastern Russia, snow fell, muting the usual sounds. Nikolai Baranov, a 52-year-old forestry worker, had been managing patrols in the buffer zones near the Cody Allen Mountains. He monitored traps, logging boundaries, and poaching activity, living alone in a small settlement near Dalner. That week, he was assigned to survey a hunting reserve after reports of wolves pushing closer to villages. He rode out before dawn on his snowmobile, carrying only bread, tea, a hand axe, and flares. His colleagues said he preferred working alone, claiming a second engine scared off wildlife. His assignment that day was simple: document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves had become increasingly active, driven from higher ground after a collapse in wild boar numbers. They could travel up to 20 miles in a single night, driven by hunger across frozen ground and sparse woodland. Their diets shifted with the season: deer in autumn, carrion, or smaller mammals. But in the hard months of winter, when deep cold set in and prey vanished beneath ice or snow, instinct sometimes blurred into desperation. Locals warned of animals following sled trails at dusk, warnings Nikolai heard that morning but didn't take seriously. He checked his flare gun but left his rifle behind, citing its weight. By noon, the weather shifted fast, gusting snow and dropping visibility. His supervisor made several radio attempts that went unanswered, assuming battery failure from the cold. When evening came and Nikolai still hadn't returned, Yevgen, a neighboring ranger and longtime friend, prepared to follow his route before dark. Yevgen rode out around 5 p.m. with a flashlight and a sidearm. The tracks were faint but visible, a single snowmobile line winding north, then stopping abruptly about 800 meters from the ridge. The engine was half buried in snow, its headlight still faintly glowing. Prints showed Nikolai had dismounted, perhaps to clear ice from the track. Around the site, another pattern emerged: paw marks, deep and overlapping, circling. The snow bore drag lines, evidence of pacing. Then the circle tightened. From that point, the scene unfolded through what Yevgen later described as a sequence of struggle. Human footprints turned erratic, moving backward. Closer inspection revealed a snapped branch at chest height and a torn glove 10 feet away. A smear of blood marked the snowmobile's side panel. 30 feet beyond, the snow showed clear impressions of multiple bodies pressing down. Wolves and man. The wolves had likely approached silently, using the cover of snowfall and wind. Initial bites were to the legs, pulling him down. Blood spray against nearby birch bark indicated arterial injury within seconds. As the attack progressed, the evidence suggested coordinated movement. Bite patterns indicated coordinated restraint from multiple angles. His jacket was shredded along the spine, showing where one animal had clamped onto his back while another tore at the neck. Boot prints ended mid-stride, replaced by drag marks. Yevgen followed them cautiously, revolver drawn. The forest was unnervingly still. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow around it was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. Later investigations showed that the surrounding prints showed at least 4 individuals, 2 larger adults, 2 smaller juveniles. Yevgen radioed the base immediately. It took nearly an hour for a snow vehicle from the nearest post to arrive, by which time darkness had swallowed the clearing. The men lifted the body onto a tarp, careful not to disturb the bite patterns for analysis. The stench of blood lingered even in the cold. The pack didn't return, but distant howls echoed as the rescuers secured the area. Nikolai's remains were taken to Dalner for examination. Autopsy confirmed catastrophic blood loss with multiple punctures to major vessels and crushing trauma to the neck vertebrae consistent with a fatal bite. Time of death was estimated shortly after the onset of the attack. The official report listed predatory behavior exacerbated by winter scarcity. Specialists noted that 2016 saw an unusual decline in prey density across the region. The incident received a single mention on regional news, framed as a tragic encounter during severe weather. There was no footage, only photographs from the recovery team that were never released publicly. There's something about alligators that has always captivated me. Perhaps it's the sheer primal force they represent, a living link to a world millions of years gone by. Perfectly adapted ambush hunters, they've remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years. Adult males can reach staggering sizes, over 14 feet long and weighing over 1,000 pounds, with a bite force exceeding 3,000 pounds per square inch. I remember reading about a man named Walt, a retiree from Ohio who'd moved to Florida for the golf and the sunshine. He bought a house with a dock right on the water and developed a habit of feeding the ducks. It was a simple plea, watching the sunset with a beer in hand, tossing breadcrumbs to the waterfowl. But Walt's routine had an unintended consequence. The Sunset Lakes community where he lived was built on reclaimed wetlands, an intricate system of ponds and canals designed to manage storm runoff and provide scenic water features. These waterways connected to natural creeks, allowing wildlife to move freely. Heavy rains had raised water levels, bringing more wildlife activity than usual, including alligators. Most residents, like Walt, had learned to coexist with the reptiles. However, Walt's duck feeding had created a reliable food source, attracting waterfowl and, unknowingly, drawing the attention of a much larger predator. One evening, Walt was relaxing on his patio when his fishing lure snagged in the vegetation near his dock. He waded into the knee-deep water using a net to free it. He'd done this many times before, confident that the shallow water was safe. But this time was different. The attack came from directly beneath him. A 12-foot male alligator, submerged motionless near the dock for over an hour, exploded upward. Its jaws clamped down on Walt's right leg, the bone-crushing prez instantly fracturing his femur and severing major arteries. The alligator initiated its signature death roll, spinning violently in the water, dragging Walt into the deeper canal. Within minutes, Walt's movements ceased, the result of drowning and massive blood loss. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but it was too late. The alligator had retreated into the deeper water with Walt's body. The subsequent investigation revealed the grim truth. Walt's regular duck feeding had inadvertently attracted the alligator, creating a fatal situation. Walt's death prompted immediate changes to the community's water safety protocols, including the installation of warning signs. Adult male alligators can reach lengths of 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds. I've always found that fact both terrifying and fascinating. Their jaws can exert over 3,000 pounds of press per square inch. With that kind of force, they can launch themselves out of the water with explosive power. Anything moving near their territory is seen as either food or a threat. I recall a story of an airboat tour that was progressing smoothly when the guide spotted a massive alligator sunning itself on a mud bank, only about 20 feet away. This reptile was exceptional, easily 12 feet long and weighing over 800 pounds. It was utterly still in the afternoon heat, a prehistoric form rendered motionless. A man named Michael began photographing the magnificent predator. He was excited to capture images of such an impressive wild animal to show his colleagues. But his enthusiasm overcame his caution as he leaned farther over the boat's edge to get closer shots. Then his phone slipped from his grip and began falling toward the dark water. Without thinking, Michael lunged forward, extending his body over the side of the airboat, desperately trying to catch his expensive device before it disappeared into the swamp. The massive alligator had been patiently monitoring the boat. Michael's sudden movement triggered its attack immediately. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mudbank with terrifying speed. Its powerful tail propelled it through the water like a missile, aimed directly at Michael's exposed position. The alligator's massive jaws clamped down on Michael's outstretched arm with bone-crushing force. Its 3,000 pounds of bite press instantly shattered bones and severed major arteries. Michael's scream of shock and pain echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him completely over the side of the airboat and into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers grabbed desperately at Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat while the massive alligator maintained its crushing grip on his arm. The alligator immediately began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining its devastating grip. Michael's struggles grew weaker as the combination of massive blood loss, crushing injuries, and drowning overwhelmed his body. The alligator's grip never loosened as it continued the death roll with mechanical precision, each rotation causing additional trauma while ensuring its prey could not escape. Within minutes, Michael's movement ceased as the alligator's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive reptile dragged his body into deeper water, where it disappeared beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body was not recovered until the following day, when wildlife officials located the massive alligator and retrieved the remains. The tour company immediately implemented physical barriers around all passenger seating areas and enhanced safety briefings for future tours. Michael's death prompted his family to advocate for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident highlighted the deadly consequences of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators and became a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing photography over personal safety. It was July 8, 2017, and Detroit's summer heat shimmered off abandoned lots as Maria Santos loaded her car with dog food and water. At 28, she'd spent 5 years walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral population by night. Recently laid off, she'd been spending more time in dangerous neighborhoods, trying to help animals most people considered beyond saving. The economic collapse had hit Detroit hard, leaving entire neighborhoods abandoned and creating perfect breeding grounds for packs of wild dogs. These weren't lost pets. They were second and third generation feral animals that had never known human kindness, surviving by scavenging and defending territory with savage efficiency. Maria's regular route took her through 6 abandoned lots, each home to a different pack. She knew their hierarchies, feeding schedules, and individual personalities. But the newest group concerned her the most. 6 dogs led by a large German Shepherd mix she'd nicknamed Alpha, including several animals she didn't recognize. This pack was hungrier, more aggressive, and less predictable than the others. But Maria's compassion overruled her caution. These animals needed help, and she was the only one willing to provide it. As twilight settled over the abandoned neighborhood, Maria parked near the lot where Alpha's pack had made their home. The area was a wasteland of broken concrete and waist-high weeds, perfect cover for animals that had learned to hunt and hide. Maria had been feeding this pack for 3 weeks, always maintaining a safe distance, but tonight felt different. The dogs seemed more agitated, their movements more coordinated, their attention more focused on her than the food. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs, animals that saw humans not as providers but as competitors. Alpha emerged from the shadows first, his 80-pound frame moving with predatory grace. Behind him came the others, a scarred pit bull mix, 2 smaller dogs, and 3 newcomers whose breeds were impossible to determine. Their eyes reflected the dim street light like mirrors. Maria began distributing food as always, tossing handfuls of kibble in different directions to prevent fighting. But tonight, the strategy backfired. Instead of dispersing to eat, the dogs began to circle. I've seen what happens when predatory instincts, refined by years of survival, take over. It's not pretty. It's a chilling reminder that the line between domesticity and wildness can be razor thin. Sometimes kindness is forgotten in the face of perceived threat. I remember reading about Maria, a woman who fed a pack of 6 stray dogs in an abandoned neighborhood. She cared for them, but one day when 2 of the smaller dogs began fighting over food, she made a fatal mistake. She stepped in. Alpha, the leader, saw her as competition. He attacked, and the other dogs joined in. 80 pounds of muscle slammed into her chest. Jaws clamped down. There was no escape. Her screams went unheard in that desolate place. It took 3 days to capture the dogs. They were euthanized, rehabilitation deemed impossible. Then my research led me to another story, this one set in Uganda. It was September 8, 2015, when Kendra Sullivan, a wildlife photographer, arrived at the Ngamba Island Chimpanzee Sanctuary, 100 acres of forested island on Lake Victoria, a refuge for orphaned and rescued chimpanzees. I learned that Kendra, commissioned by a wildlife magazine, was there to document the rehabilitation work. She was known for her fearless approach, believing her experience with domestic animals gave her an innate understanding of animal behavior. Her friend Amy Chen, a documentary filmmaker, accompanied her. Dr. James Mukasa, the sanctuary's director, and Peter Sally, a caretaker, grew concerned. Kendra dismissed their safety briefings, demanding access to restricted areas for better photographs. Peter repeatedly warned her about the unpredictable nature of these powerful animals, but she brushed it off as superstition. The sanctuary housed 49 rescued chimpanzees, many traumatized by poaching or the illegal pet trade. Despite rehabilitation, they retained their wild instincts and physical capabilities, making them extremely dangerous without proper barriers. Chimpanzees, I discovered, are among the most powerful primates, with strength 5 times greater than that of an adult human. Adult males can weigh up to 150 pounds, stand over 4 feet tall, and their grip strength can exceed 1,300 pounds per square inch, and those canine teeth over 2 inches long, designed for defense and dominance. During the afternoon tour, Kendra became frustrated with the viewing restrictions. She wanted access to maintenance areas where staff entered enclosed. Dr. Mukasa repeatedly explained these areas were strictly off-limits. But while the group observed chimpanzees in a distant enclosure, Kendra noticed an unlocked gate leading to a maintenance corridor. Despite explicit warnings, she slipped away, believing her experience had prepared her for anything. That maintenance area brought Kendra within direct reach of Bozo, the sanctuary's dominant male, a 150-pound adult rescued as an infant 15 years earlier. Bozo had shown aggressive tendencies and was considered one of the most dangerous animals. He was resting near the barrier when he detected Kendra's presence. Chimpanzees are highly territorial, viewing unfamiliar humans as potential threats. Bozo immediately became agitated. When she approached and raised her camera, Bozo interpreted it as a challenge. His response was immediate. He lunged forward and grabbed Kendra's extended arm with crushing force. I've read accounts that still haunt me. Take, for example, the story of Kendra, attacked by a chimpanzee named Bozo. The force of his bite was mead at 1,300 $1 per square inch, enough to immediately fracture bone. I can only imagine the horror as he pulled her against the barrier, his massive canines tearing into her face and neck. Chimpanzees, I learned, instinctively target the face, hands, and genitals during attacks. For nearly 2 minutes, Bozo bit and clawed at her, crushing facial bones and severing major blood vessels. Her attempts to defend herself were futile. Her free hand was severely mutilated, several fingers crushed. Peter Sully, hearing her screams, used high-press water hoses to drive Bozo away. But it was too late. Kendra died from hypovolemic shock and facial trauma before emergency services could reach her. The investigation that followed revealed security failures, and her family filed lawsuits. Then there's the account from February 9, 2014, near Lung, Saskatchewan. It was a seemingly routine trip into the woods for 2 men. David Lasky, a part-time wildlife photographer, and his cousin Jeff. They often went to retrieve SD cards from trail cams. On this particular weekend, they decided to check cameras near Waskew Lake. They'd heard distant howls before, but David believed wolves avoided humans. The plan was simple: a 2-hour snowmobile ride, a short hike, and back before dusk. Wolves in that region typically weighed around 90 pounds and moved in packs of 4 to 8. They dressed warmly and carried a single red flare for safety. By 9:30 a.m., they parked their snowmobile and began walking through the snow. Everything seemed normal at first. They reached the first camera and swapped the SD card. But around 10:15, as they crossed a creek, Jeff slipped on the ice. David crouched to help him. That's when they noticed movement among the trees. The animals stood still, their eyes reflecting the light. Jeff shouted and waved his arms, but the wolves didn't run. Unbeknownst to them, a freshly killed deer lay nearby, a cached carcass the wolves were defending. They began to fan out slowly, forming a semicircle. David tried to reason Jeff that they were just curious and that noise would drive them away. But then one of the wolves lowered its head and started advancing. The men began backing up the slope toward their snowmobile. Then came the first lunge, a gray blur, jaws clamping onto the back of David's leg. The impact sent him face first into the snow. Jeff reached for the flare, fumbling with the cap. 2 more wolves broke from the trees. David tried to kick free, leaving streaks of blood in the snow. He managed to hit one wolf with his camera bag, but another struck from the side, teeth finding his shoulder. Jeff finally lit the flare. One wolf snarled and darted back, fur singed, but the others held their ground. David was on his knees now, blood pumping through his fingers. He tried to rise, but his leg gave out. Jeff charged forward with the flare, waving it aggressively. The heat drove them back momentarily. David slumped sideways. I often find myself dwelling on the moment when the line between the human world and the wild is blurred, sometimes tragically. It happened on December 9th, 2018. The hillside community of Canyon Vista, nestled in suburban Los Angeles, was enjoying an unusually warm winter evening, but that night, the urban sprawl met the raw power of nature in a way no one could have predicted. Jeff, panting, swung the flare in wide arcs, trying to keep the wolves at bay. They retreated, growling, into the trees. He pressed on his cousin David's wound, but it was too deep. The movement stopped within a minute. He pulled David's camera bag close and used his phone to call for help. The signal was faint, intermittent, but it reached a nearby ranger station. 40 minutes later, authorities arrived by snowmobile. They found Jeff sitting beside the body, shaking uncontrollably. Wolf tracks surrounded the site in a broad ring, with drag marks leading back towards the tree line and the cached deer carcass. The official report listed the cause of death as exsanguination from femoral artery trauma, consistent with large animal bites. Provincial conservation officers, assisted by federal wildlife agents, closed the area within the hour. Samples were taken from bite margins for DNA analysis, and the implicated pack was later trapped and relocated to a remote management zone north of Reindeer Lake. Wildlife biologists suggested the wolves had been defending a food cache, not actively hunting, but the distinction mattered little to those who saw the aftermath. Kevin Chen, a 16-year-old high school junior and varsity basketball player, was running late after practice. He decided to take his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot, rather than follow the longer route along the main road. He was an honor student and a star athlete, earning recognition as one of his school's most promising college prospects. He lived with his parents and younger sister in a modern home that backed up against the natural open space that made Canyon Vista such a desirable address. He often used the informal trails and vacant lots to move quickly between his home and school, a practice that had never caused any problems during his 4 years in the neighborhood. But the Canyon Vista area had been experiencing increased wildlife activity following a series of devastating wildfires that had burned thousands of acres in the surrounding mountains. The fires had displaced numerous predators, forcing them to seek new territory and food sources in areas they had previously avoided. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings in residential areas, but most residents viewed these as routine precautions rather than serious threats. Kevin was aware of the wildlife warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals during his frequent use of the neighborhood's informal trail system. He carried his basketball gear in a backpack and typically moved quickly through the undeveloped areas, confident that his familiarity with the terrain and his athletic ability would keep him safe from any potential threats. Mountain lions are solitary predators that require large territories to support their hunting needs, with adult males controlling ranges of up to 100 square miles. Juvenile males are particularly dangerous as they establish new territories, often displaying more aggressive behavior than experienced adults. These young cats are less skilled at hunting natural prey and may target easier victims, including domestic animals and, occasionally, humans. Mountain lions are capable of incredible stealth and can stalk prey for extended periods before launching surprise attacks from close range. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, he was unaware that an 80 lb juvenile male mountain lion had been using the area as a hunting ground for domestic cats and small dogs that wandered from nearby homes. The young cat had been displaced from his natal territory by an older, more dominant male, and was desperately seeking to establish new hunting grounds that could support his survival. The mountain lion had been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush while staying downwind to avoid detection. The cat's hunting instincts were triggered by Kevin's size, movement pattern, and the fact that he was alone and vulnerable in the predator's newly claimed territory. The attack came from behind as Kevin navigated through a particularly dense section of chaparral. The 80 lb mountain lion launched himself from the brush with explosive force, his powerful hind legs propelling him through the air to land squarely on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground, while the cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his four-in canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae, while his bite force targeted the spinal cord. Kevin's attempts to fight back with his backpack proved futile against the cat's superior strength and positioning. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Kevin's shoulders and torso, each swipe opening deep gashes that caused massive blood loss. Kevin's screams for help echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents in nearby homes to the emergency unfolding in the vacant lot. Several homeowners called 911 while attempting to locate the source of the disturbance, but the dense vegetation made it difficult to pinpoint Kevin's exact location. The mountain lion continued his attack for several minutes, driven by predatory instincts and the stress of establishing new territory. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first 911 call, using Kevin's continued cries for help to locate him in the brush. I've seen what wildfires can do, how they displace creatures, forcing them into territories they don't understand. It makes me think of a mountain lion driven from its home, eventually leading to tragedy. The report said the mountain lion fled when the emergency responders arrived, the bright lights and sirens pushing it back into the chaparral. Kevin, the victim, was airlifted to a trauma center, but he died from massive blood loss and spinal injuries during emergency surgery. The investigation revealed the juvenile mountain lion had been displaced by recent wildfires and was attempting to establish new territory in the residential area. Wildlife officers tracked and euthanized the cat the following day, determining that its aggressive behavior toward humans made it unsuitable for relocation. Kevin's death prompted the city to fence off all vacant lots in hillside communities and develop new wildlife management protocols for areas where urban development meets natural habitat. The Canyon Vista community implemented comprehensive safety measures, including motion sensor lighting along all informal trails, emergency communication systems, and mandatory wildlife awareness training for all residents. Kevin's family established a memorial foundation to support wildlife safety education and habitat preservation programs that reduce human-wildlife conflicts. It was November 3, 2015. The sprawling grounds of Loner Exotic Ranch stretched across 300 acres of East Texas countryside, where wealthy clients paid premium prices for once-in-a-lifetime photo sessions with dangerous predators. The private facility operated in the shadows of legitimate wildlife conservation, offering interactions that accredited zoos would never permit. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across custom-built encloses housing tigers, lions, and other big cats acquired through questionable channels. Brandon Walsh, a 27-year-old personal trainer from Houston, had discovered the ranch through word-of-mouth recommendations from clients who had visited similar facilities. Brandon was passionate about fitness and adventure, always seeking new challenges that would test his physical and mental limits. He had saved money for months to afford this unique experience, viewing it as the ultimate test of his courage and confidence around dangerous animals. Brandon had built his personal training business through dedication and hard work, developing a reputation for helping clients overcome their fears and achieve seemingly impossible fitness goals. His confident personality and fearless approach to challenges had made him popular among Houston's fitness community, though his success had perhaps made him overconfident about his ability to handle any dangerous situation. That afternoon, Brandon had paid the ranch's exorbitant fee for a private photo session with Sasha, a 300-pound female Bengal tiger who had been hand-raised from a cub. The ranch owner, a former circus trainer with decades of experience handling big cats, had agreed to supervise the session while repeatedly emphasizing the extreme dangers involved. Bengal tigers are among the world's most powerful predators, with adult females weighing up to 350 pounds and possessing incredible strength, speed, and hunting instincts that remain sharp regardless of human contact. These magnificent cats are solitary territorial animals that can become extremely aggressive when their personal space is violated. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 1,000 pounds per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can grow up to 4 inches long. The photo session began with Brandon positioned outside Sasha's enclosure, capturing dramatic shots of himself posed near the massive predator while maintaining the safety barrier between them. However, Brandon quickly became frustrated with the distance, believing he needed closer contact to create the dramatic photos he had envisioned. Brandon convinced the ranch owner to allow him closer access to Sasha, arguing that his physical conditioning and confident energy would keep the tiger calm during the shoot. Against his better judgment and all established safety protocols, the owner agreed to let Brandon enter a smaller holding area adjacent to Sasha's main enclosure. The holding area was separated from Sasha's territory by only a chain-link barrier, bringing Brandon within arm's reach of the massive predator. Brandon began posing for his camera, which was mounted on a tripod and set to take photos automatically. Brandon's fatal mistake was crouching down next to the barrier and extending his hand toward Sasha, believing that his confident demeanor would demonstrate his dominance over the apex predator. The tiger's ears flattened slightly against her massive head, and her tail began twitching with increasing frequency. Sasha's attack was swift and devastating. The moment Brandon moved suddenly to adjust his pose for another photo, the tiger's hunting instincts activated with explosive force. Sasha launched herself at the barrier with tremendous power. Her massive paws struck the chain-link fencing, while her razor-sharp claws found purchase on Brandon's extended arm. The tiger's incredible strength pulled Brandon against the barrier, while her powerful jaws snapped at his position through the fencing. The tiger's claws raked across Brandon's arm and shoulder, opening deep gashes that immediately began bleeding profusely, while her crushing grip prevented any possibility of retreat. The ranch owner rushed to intervene, using emergency protocols to distract Sasha and force her to release her grip on Brandon. However, the tiger's claws had already caused catastrophic damage to Brandon's arm and shoulder, severing major arteries and causing massive blood loss that quickly overwhelmed his system. Brandon collapsed from shock and blood loss within minutes of the attack, his physical conditioning proving useless against injuries that no human could survive. I've seen the aftermath of so many tragedies, and each one leaves a mark. There was Brandon, for instance, a fitness model who died from massive trauma and blood loss after being attacked by a lion during a photo shoot. The emergency responders arrived quickly, but it was too late. The ranch where it happened didn't have the proper permits or insurance, and they were violating state regulations regarding public safety around dangerous animals. It sent shockwaves through the fitness community, and prompted enhanced safety education about the dangers of using wild animals as props. Then there's the story of Tommy Rodriguez. It was August 19th, 2013. The Missouri heat was heavy over his remote property, and the stench of neglect hung in the air. Tommy had been running puppy mills for over a decade. Financial press had forced him to cut corners, and that's what ultimately cost him his life. His 20-acre property was a maze of makeshift kennels, converted sheds, housing nearly 80 dogs in various states of breeding and neglect. He specialized in popular breeds, selling them at high prices to unsuspecting buyers who never saw the conditions their pets came from. But the real money came from the security side of his operation. 4 massive dogs patrolled the perimeter. 2 cane corsos weighing over 120 pounds each, and 2 mastiff mixes, tipping the scales at nearly 140 pounds. These weren't pets or breeding stock. They were weapons, acquired from a defunct fighting operation and trained to be aggressive. The financial press that led to Tommy's death had been building for months. Veterinary bills, feed costs, and facility maintenance had eaten into profits. Increased scrutiny from animal welfare organizations had forced him to operate more carefully, but he'd been cutting back on everything: food, medical care, even basic maintenance. The guard dogs, once fed premium meat to maintain their strength, had been reduced to scraps and cheap kibble. Tommy didn't understand that hungry guard dogs were exponentially more dangerous than well-fed ones. Hunger sharpened their predatory instincts, made them more territorial, and reduced their tolerance for human presence. The 4 animals that had once been content to patrol were now viewing everything on the property, including Tommy himself, as potential competition for scarce resources. The dogs had been showing signs of increased aggression for weeks. They'd begun fighting among themselves over food, marking territory more aggressively, and showing less deference to Tommy's commands. A smart operator would have recognized these warning signs, but Tommy was desperate, distracted, and dangerously overconfident. On that sweltering August night, Tommy made his final rounds of the property, checking on breeding females and security systems. It was past midnight, and the Missouri countryside was silent except for distant barking and the hum of inadequate ventilation fans. He carried a flashlight and a metal rod for moving aggressive animals, but his attention was focused on financial calculations rather than the danger lurking in the shadows. The guard dogs had been without food for 3 days, not by design, but because Tommy had been too busy dealing with a sick litter to maintain their feeding schedule. Their hunger had reached a critical point where survival instincts overrode years of conditioning. They were no longer guard dogs protecting property. They were predators looking for their next meal. Tommy's mistake was approaching the area where he kept the guard dogs without proper precautions. Normally, he would have fed them first, ensuring their compliance before entering their territory. But financial stress and exhaustion had made him careless, and he walked directly into their domain, carrying nothing but a flashlight and false confidence. The attack began when Brutus, the larger cane corso, emerged from the shadows near the feeding area. His 125-pound frame moved with surprising silence, his massive head lowered in a hunting posture that Tommy should have recognized as a threat. Behind him came the others: Titan, the second cane corso; Rex, a 140-pound mastiff mix; and Scar, whose scarred muzzle told the story of his fighting background. Tommy realized the danger too late. As he turned to retreat, Brutus launched himself forward, his powerful jaws clamping down on Tommy's left eye with crushing force. The impact drove Tommy to the ground, his flashlight spinning away into darkness as he screamed for help that would never come. The other 3 dogs joined the attack within seconds, their pack instincts fully engaged. Rex grabbed Tommy's right arm, his massive jaws crushing bone as he shook violently. Titan went for the torso, his teeth tearing through clothing and flesh with mechanical efficiency. Scar circled the attack, darting in to bite and retreat, his fighting experience evident in his tactical approach. Tommy's screams echoed across the empty countryside, but his nearest neighbor was over 2 miles away. The dogs worked with the coordination of experienced predators. Their attacks focused on disabling their prey rather than killing quickly. They had learned patience in their previous lives, and hunger had made them methodical in their violence. The assault continued for nearly 20 minutes, with the dogs taking turns feeding on Tommy while he was still alive. His struggles grew weaker as blood loss and shock took their toll, but the animals showed no mercy. They had been conditioned to view violence as normal, hunger as constant, and humans as either threats or food sources. I've always been haunted by the story of Tommy, the puppy mill owner. It's a stark reminder that the cruelty we inflict often comes back to us in unexpected ways. In his case, the very animals he exploited for profit became the instruments of his demise. Their hunger and desperation turned them into something monstrous, a reflection of his own actions. Tommy finally backed away, but there was no help for him. His body lay broken and partially consumed in the dirt near the feeding area, surrounded by the very animals he had used to guard his illegal operation. The guard dogs, their hunger sated for the moment, retreated to their corners, their aggressive nature unchanged. For 3 weeks, Tommy's body remained undiscovered, a feast for the dogs. The rest of his breeding operation slowly collapsed. The other dogs, trapped in their kennels without food or water, began to die of starvation. The stench of death eventually drew the attention of authorities who were investigating reports of animal cruelty. What the sheriff's deputies found was a scene of unimaginable horror. Tommy's remains were scattered across the feeding area, while dozens of dead and dying dogs filled the makeshift kennels. The 4 guard dogs showing aggression towards the officers were shot on sight. The investigation revealed the full scope of Tommy's illegal operation. Dozens of breeding females kept in deplorable conditions, puppies dying from disease and neglect, and financial records showing he'd been selling sick animals to unsuspecting buyers across multiple states. The surviving dogs were euthanized due to their poor health and aggressive conditioning. Tommy's death marked the end of one of Missouri's largest illegal puppy mills, but the cost extended far beyond his own life. It was August 22, 2014. The exclusive Cypress Point community on the edge of the Florida Everglades shimmered in the intense summer heat. This gated development, built on reclaimed wetlands with artificial lakes and water features, represented the height of luxury living in South Florida. Roberto Mendez, a 35-year-old landscaper and small business owner, was working alone that day, maintaining the pristine grounds that made Cypress Point so desirable. He had built his company from nothing, starting with a single lawnmower and gradually expanding to serve some of the area's wealthiest communities. Roberto took pride in his work, known for his attention to detail and willingness to go the extra mile for his clients. He supported his wife and 2 young children, often working long hours in the Florida heat to provide for their future. Cypress Point had been built on former Everglades wetlands. Developers created an elaborate system of decorative ponds and water features connected to natural waterways through canals and drainage systems. The artificial lakes were stocked with ornamental fish and surrounded by tropical landscaping, which required constant maintenance in the humid subtropical climate. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels throughout the region, creating ideal conditions for wildlife to move between natural and artificial water systems. Roberto was familiar with Florida's wildlife. He had encountered alligators, snakes, and other dangerous animals during his years of outdoor work. He respected these creatures and typically checked water features carefully before working near them. On this particular afternoon, he was trimming decorative bushes around one of the community's smaller ornamental ponds when his expensive hedge trimmer slipped from his hands and fell into the shallow water. American alligators are perfectly camouflaged ambush predators, capable of remaining motionless for hours while waiting for prey. Adult females typically meow 8 to 10 feet in length and can weigh up to 200 pounds, possessing incredible speed and power when attacking. Alligators are most dangerous when protecting nesting sites or when surprised by humans who venture into their territory. Their bite force exceeds 2,000 pounds per square inch, and their death roll technique is designed to disorient and drown prey in aquatic environments. Roberto waded into the knee-deep ornamental pond to retrieve his hedge trimmer, assuming the manicured water feature was safe for a brief entry. The pond appeared peaceful and well-maintained, with no visible signs of wildlife activity among the aquatic plants and ornamental features. He'd worked around similar water features hundreds of times without incident. The attack came the moment Roberto's feet touched the pond's muddy bottom. A 10-foot female alligator, which had been lying motionless among the decorative vegetation, exploded into action, her powerful jaws clamping down on Roberto's right leg with devastating force. The massive reptile's bite instantly fractured his tibia and fibula, while her teeth punctured through major arteries and muscle tissue. The alligator immediately initiated her signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining her crushing grip on Roberto's leg. The violent rotation pulled Roberto off his feet and into the deeper center of the pond, where the gator's aquatic advantages became overwhelming. Roberto's desperate attempts to break free only triggered the alligator's instincts to bite down harder and roll more aggressively. Roberto's screams for help echoed across the manicured grounds as the alligator continued her relentless death roll. The spinning motion dislocated Roberto's knee and hip, causing massive internal bleeding and tissue damage. The ornamental pond's clear water turned red as Roberto's struggles grew weaker with each rotation. A homeowner working in his garden heard Roberto's cries and rushed to investigate. The ornamental pond's connection to natural waterways. It allowed a large alligator to enter a residential area undetected. I remember when I first read that, I couldn't shake the image. Roberto's death, a direct result, prompted immediate changes to Cypress Point's water feature management. They installed barriers between decorative ponds and natural drainage systems, and new safety protocols were put in place for maintenance workers. Then, on March 22, 2017, Tara Whitfield arrived at the Neptune Islands, off the coast of South Australia. It's one of the world's premier great white shark diving destinations. Those remote, rocky outcrops jut out from the Southern Ocean, surrounded by crystal clear waters that plunge to depths of over 200 feet. These nutrient-rich waters serve as a natural highway for migrating great whites, drawing the massive predators to hunt the abundant seal colonies. Tara Whitfield, a 38-year-old marine biology graduate student from Los Angeles, had booked the most expensive shark cage diving package available, and she immediately began making unreasonable demands. She was known for her entitled attitude, for her belief that money could buy her anything. She had already berated Captain Steve Morrison and marine biologist Dr. Lisa Chen multiple times during the morning briefing. Her boyfriend, Brad Mitchell, watched uncomfortably as Tara screamed at the crew for what she called their pathetic safety restrictions. Captain Morrison, with 18 years of experience operating in these dangerous waters, had dealt with difficult clients before. But Tara's aggressive behavior and complete lack of empathy alarmed him. She repeatedly demanded that the protective cage be removed entirely, claiming she had paid premium prices and deserved unrestricted access to the sharks. When Dr. Lisa Chen attempted to explain the life-threatening dangers, Tara dismissed her as an incompetent employee who was clearly jealous of successful people. Tara had convinced herself that her graduate student status and expensive booking fee entitled her to special treatment. She threatened to destroy the company's reputation online and file lawsuits if the crew didn't provide her with the extreme experience she demanded. Her complete disregard for safety became evident when she suggested that crew members should enter the water first to test whether the sharks were dangerous. The waters around Neptune Islands hosted some of the largest great white sharks on Earth, apex predators that had ruled these seas for over 400 million years. These magnificent hunters can reach lengths of over 20 feet and weights exceeding 4,000 pounds. Their massive triangular heads house rows of razor-sharp serrated teeth. Each tooth measures up to 3 inches in length and is designed to slice through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. Great whites possess the most powerful bite force of any living creature, capable of exerting over 4,000 pounds per square inch of crushing press. The crew had successfully attracted multiple great white sharks using a carefully prepared chum mixture. Among the responding predators was a massive 18-foot female estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds, a shark that had been feeding aggressively on the bait. The enormous shark displayed classic hunting behaviors, circling the boat with calculated precision while investigating the steel diving cage. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning to create a fake equipment malfunction that would justify exiting the protective cage. She believed she was clever enough to manipulate the situation to get the unrestricted shark access she felt entitled to. Once submerged in the protective cage, Tara immediately began signaling fake distress to the surface crew, pointing frantically at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison initiated emergency procedures to bring her to the surface, but instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, believing her superior intelligence made her invulnerable. Her erratic swimming movements created the exact type of distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. The massive female great white detected Tara's panicked swimming immediately and abandoned the chumbait to investigate this new potential prey. The enormous predator approached from below at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. The shark's assault was swift, devastating. Rising from the depths like a living torpedo, the great white struck Tara from below with tremendous force, its massive jaws opening to reveal rows of gleaming, serrated teeth. The impact drove Tara upward as the shark's jaws clamped down around her torso with bone-crushing prez. The razor-sharp teeth sliced through her wetsuit and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force of 4,000 pounds per square inch shattered Tara's rib cage instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels throughout her torso. The shark's powerful jaw muscles continued applying prez while its head thrashed violently from side to side, the signature feeding behavior that allows great whites to tear away large chunks of flesh. The violent shaking motion severed Tara's body at the waist, separating her upper and lower torso. I've seen firsthand how quickly things can go wrong in the wild, how a lifetime of experience can be undone in a single fatal moment. It's a hard lesson, one often paid for in blood. Take the story of Tara, for instance. She believed money could buy her safety, even override the instincts of a shark. Her death was swift. Massive blood loss, traumatic shock, vital organs destroyed in seconds as the shark fed. Her arrogance, born of entitlement, led her to deliberately sabotage equipment and ignore safety protocols. The aftermath brought stricter regulations for shark cage diving and lawsuits from a family seemingly unwilling to accept responsibility, even in grief. Then there's the case of Harold Thompson down in Alabama on March 22, 2015. At 71, Hank, as everyone called him, moved slowly among the kennels, the sun beating down on his property. For 20 years, he and his wife Martha had built a life-breeding Rottweilers and German Shepherds. What began as a hobby became a modest business, selling litters across the Southeast. But age, as it often does, had brought a certain carelessness. In his younger days, Hank would never have entered a kennel alone, especially not with breeding males in their territorial phases. He knew the power of those dogs, the speed of their attacks, but experience had bred overconfidence. Their prized dog was Brutus, a 130-pound Rottweiler. At 4 years old, he was in his prime, his bloodline tracing back to German working dogs. His offspring commanded premium prices. But recently, Brutus had become increasingly aggressive. A minor injury to his rear leg had left him limping, irritable, even snapping at Martha. The vet prescribed pain medication, but the dog's temperament only worsened. Martha had voiced her concerns about Hank working alone with Brutus, but Hank dismissed them. He'd raised Brutus from a puppy. He believed their bond was unbreakable. On that March afternoon, Martha drove into town for supplies, leaving Hank alone with the dogs. The kennels needed cleaning, water bowls needed filling. It was work Hank had done thousands of times before. Brutus watched Hank approach, his dark eyes tracking every movement. The dog was panting heavily, despite the shade. His injured leg caused him to shift uncomfortably. Pain, I've learned, can make even the most docile creatures unpredictable. And Brutus was far from docile. Hank unlocked the kennel gate and stepped inside, bucket in hand, his attention focused on the dirty water bowl. He'd performed this routine countless times, but today, Brutus was different. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail held low, his massive body coiled with tension. As Hank bent down, his back turned to the dog, Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning. Just 130 pounds of muscle launching through the air. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor, his bucket clattering away as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single, catastrophic bite. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's head, but Brutus had locked on with predatory determination. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone. Hank's screams were cut short, replaced by a wet, gurgling sound. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack, driven by instincts bred into his lineage. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless on the kennel floor, his life ebbing away. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property quiet. She called out for Hank, but received no response. Rounding the corner, she saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the horror unfolding before her. The dog's reaction to Martha's presence was immediate and threatening. He positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. The decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk further casualties. The massive Rottweiler died with 3 bullets in his chest. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident, caused by his failure to recognize the warning signs of an aggressive, injured animal. The breeding operation was shut down, the remaining dogs relocated, and Martha was left to grieve both her husband and the animal that had been part of their family. It reminds me of another case, one that unfolded on September 3, 2013, near the Toklat River in Denali National Park, Alaska. I've always been drawn to stories where humans test the boundaries of nature, sometimes with tragic consequences. The case of Sarah came to mind as I was reviewing some old incident reports from Denali. She was a seasoned hiker, accustomed to solo treks. She embraced a minimalist approach, carrying only essential gear and relying on her skills. Her plan was a 2-day loop near the Tlat River, carefully timed to coincide with the caribou migration. This route was known for wolf activity, as they often trailed the herds. She carried bear spray, a GPS beacon, and enough food for 2 nights. Solo travel didn't intimidate her. She had years of experience, often documenting her routes for small hiking blogs. She had properly filed for the required Denali backcountry permits. Rangers later recalled that she had inquired about late-season wolf movements but showed no concern when told sightings had increased near the river corridor. Wolves had been following caribou herds migrating south, and fresh tracks had been observed just days earlier. To Sarah, it was just part of the environment, something she respected but didn't fear. Wolves in this region averaged between 70 and 100 pounds. They were built for endurance and speed, capable of covering 40 miles a day. Their jaws delivered a bite force of nearly 400 pounds per square inch, strong enough to crush bone. Yet they rarely approached people, living primarily on caribou, hares, and ground squirrels. However, when prey grew scarce or human scent carried traces of food, curiosity sometimes lingered. That week, rangers had posted advisories near trailheads, noting that several hikers had reported wolves trailing them at a distance. Sarah likely read those postings when she signed out, though no record showed she changed her route. Her confidence in her precautions was understandable. Statistically, Denali's wolves avoided confrontation. Around 4 p.m., a passing tourist group in a vehicle on the park road spotted a lone figure standing on a gravel bar below the ridge. The hiker waved, later confirmed by clothing and timing to be Sarah, before continuing upstream toward the area where her camp was located. She reached her final GPS coordinate sometime before 4:45 p.m. The last photos on her recovered camera showed wide shots of the river valley and a small group of wolves following a caribou herd in the mid-distance. Tracks found later indicated she moved off the main gravel bar toward higher ground, likely planning to cut inland. The first sign of struggle began about half a mile from her tent. Her GPS unit recorded erratic movement, rapid looping, then a sudden stop. Investigators reconstructed what happened next through physical evidence and predator behavior analysis. The wolves had diverted toward her position once the herd passed out of sight. Sarah likely saw them at a distance as she deployed her bear spray once. Residue was detected on nearby vegetation. Wind readings that afternoon showed a westward shift, causing partial blowback of the spray mist. It worked briefly, driving the wolves about 20 feet back before the cloud dispersed. They began to circle again, emboldened by the fading chemical scent. One flank of the group approached from behind, following her retreat up a shallow embankment. Handprints pressed deep into the soil showed she climbed in haste. Blood marks began at the top of the slope. One wolf had likely lunged first, grabbing her backpack or arm. The straps were torn clean through, consistent with a pulling force rather than a cut. A second wolf joined, aiming lower, its bite breaking the skin along her thigh. She tried to fight back. The spray canister lay spent beside her pack, but the group coordinated, one attacking from the rear, the others darting forward. The ground at the site was churned with soil and hair, suggesting several minutes of movement before she was forced down. Analysis of tissue marks later revealed crushing bites to the neck and shoulder, consistent with a killing grip, the kind wolves use to suffocate large prey. Her jacket was shredded, and the torn sleeve recovered 20 feet away still held fragments of skin and fabric. Search efforts began that night with both ground crews and a helicopter dispatched after rangers noted her vehicle unmoved. The aircraft spotted a disturbed patch of gravel near the Tlat Channel the next morning. Sarah's body lay partially covered by soil and debris, her left arm missing, likely carried off by scavengers after the attack. They collected the camera and other items for analysis and later confirmed through timestamps that her final photograph was taken just 6 minutes before the estimated time of death. The park temporarily closed multiple backcountry zones along the migration corridor. Genetic sampling confirmed the wolves belonged to the Tolat pack. Investigators determined the attack began as a predatory test or prey proxy response that escalated fatally, but with no repeated approach or food-seeking behavior observed, no removals were ordered. At a private debrief, rangers explained the findings to Sarah's parents, who later issued a short statement urging that the park not punish what it protects. It was April 14, 2018, when Monica Barrett arrived at Everglades National Park in Florida, one of the largest tropical wilderness areas in the United States. The vast wetland ecosystem stretched across 1.5 million acres of sawgrass marshes and shallow waterways that served as home to some of North America's most dangerous predators. The park's intricate network of channels created the perfect habitat for massive American alligators. Monica Barrett, a 44-year-old divorce attorney from Miami, had booked a solo kayak tour to clear her head after a difficult custody case. Known for her aggressive courtroom tactics and confrontational personality, she had built her legal career on intimidating opponents and refusing to back down from any challenge. Her reputation for getting her way through sheer force of will had created a dangerous sense of entitlement. Tommy Rodriguez, a 52-year-old tour guide with over 20 years of experience, had immediately recognized Monica as a problematic client during the morning safety briefing. She had interrupted his presentation. "I've seen the destructive power of a gator's jaws up close, and the memory still chills me. They can exert over 3,000 pounds per square inch of crushing press. Their mouths are filled with 74 to 80 razor-sharp teeth, perfectly designed for gripping and crushing prey. They can stay still for hours, then explode into action faster than you can blink." I recall a case from not so long ago where a woman named Monica visited a park during peak alligator breeding season. Despite warnings about aggressive males protecting their nesting areas, she dismissed them. She even argued with the tour guide, Tommy, claiming her rights were being violated. She broke away from the group, paddling her kayak into a restricted lagoon clearly marked with warning signs, determined to explore. That lagoon was a nesting area for a massive 12-foot bull alligator. The 800-pound reptile, already on high alert, detected the vibrations from Monica's paddle strokes. The alligator launched itself from the water, its jaws clamping down on her kayak, capsizing it and throwing her into the murky water. The alligator attacked, its jaws finding purchase on Monica's torso. Its teeth punctured her life jacket, going deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite shattered ribs and punctured lungs. Then came the death roll, a violent spinning motion designed to disorient prey and cause massive internal trauma. The alligator spun through the water, Monica trapped in its jaws. The violent motion filled her punctured lungs with water, the crushing press preventing her from breathing. The death roll continued for over a minute until finally the reptile released her lifeless body. Tommy radioed for help, but it was too late. On a brighter note, May 14, 2017, saw the ancient mountains of Great Smoky Mountains National Park, rising majestically above the Tennessee landscape. The late spring afternoon was perfect for hiking, with golden sunlight filtering through the trees. Sarah Johnson, a 29-year-old nurse from Atlanta, was enjoying a weekend hiking trip with her fiancé, Tom. Sarah loved nature photography, always carrying her camera to capture memories. That afternoon, they were hiking through a remote alpine meadow when they saw two black bear cubs playing in the tall grass, their mother nowhere in sight. Sarah knew it was a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity. The forest can be a deceptive place. It seems peaceful, but a mother bear protecting her cubs. That's a force of nature unlike almost any other. Their protective instincts can turn them into incredibly dangerous creatures in an instant. It's a primal drive, and one that tragically cost a young woman her life. Sarah and her fiancé, Tom, were on an engagement trip, seeking to capture some incredible memories. They ventured into bear country, unaware of the danger they were about to encounter. Black bears are the most common bear species in North America, but a mother bear with cubs, she's a different story. Their aggression and territoriality increase exponentially compared to solitary bears. They will attack without warning, viewing any human presence near their cubs as a mortal threat that must be eliminated immediately. And these mothers possess incredible strength and speed, capable of running up to 30 mph through dense forest. Sarah, caught up in the moment, began photographing some adorable cubs from what she thought was a safe distance. Her excitement at capturing such rare footage led her to gradually move closer, trying to get better shots. Tom, with a growing sense of unease, repeatedly urged her to maintain her distance and leave the area. But Sarah was convinced that the mother bear wasn't nearby. The cubs continued their playful behavior, wrestling and tumbling through the meadow grass while Sarah documented their every move. For nearly 10 minutes, she captured dozens of images. Sarah's fatal mistake was positioning herself between the cubs and their natural escape route to the forest edge. As she moved to get a better angle, she unknowingly blocked the path the cubs would take to reach safety if they felt threatened. This triggered the protective instincts of their mother, who had been watching from the tree line. The mother bear's charge from the forest was swift and terrifying. The 200-tlba female covered the distance to Sarah's position in seconds. Her powerful legs propelled her massive frame with surprising speed. Her territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating the perceived threat to her cubs. Sarah attempted to retreat when she saw the charging bear, but her foot caught on a fallen log and she tumbled backward, still clutching her camera. The mother bear reached Sarah's position before she could regain her footing, striking her with bone-crushing force. The bear's massive paw connected with Sarah's back, her razor-sharp claws raking across Sarah's spine and shoulders, while the impact shattered several ribs. Sarah's camera flew from her grip as the bear's enormous weight pinned her to the ground. Her attempts to call for help were silenced by the crushing press on her chest. The mother bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Sarah's neck, her crushing bite force fracturing vertebrae and severing vital arteries. The bear's protective instincts drove her to continue the assault until she was certain the threat to her cubs had been completely eliminated. Within minutes, Sarah's movement ceased as the mother bear's brutal assault proved fatal. The protective mother remained near Sarah's body for several more minutes, ensuring the threat was neutralized before gathering her cubs and disappearing into the dense forest. Park rangers arrived over an hour later in response to Tom's emergency call, but Sarah was already dead from massive trauma. The bear family was tracked but left undisturbed, as wildlife officials determined the mother had been acting within normal protective behavioral patterns when defending her young. Sarah's death devastated the hiking community and prompted enhanced educational programs about wildlife safety and proper distance protocols. Her family established a foundation promoting wilderness safety education, ensuring her passion for conservation would continue through enhanced protection for both wildlife and outdoor enthusiasts.